The Hoodsbrough Hostilities. Part 2. The Great Post Office Robbery. The rumble at the railway hotel had not been kind to the spaghetti mob. Tommy Timmy had been decapitated. His sister Posy was in hospital, recovering from extensive lacerations inflicted on her with a chainsaw. Big Bruno had a black eye and refused to show his face in public. That left Bella Salmonella as the only active gang member, and she needed cash to buy cigarettes. Losing control of the railway hotel had deprived the spaghetti mob of its main source of income. But Bella was a resourceful lady. She borrowed Big Bruno's car and, accompanied by an old friend known as Ernie the Ox, she set off to rob the Hoodsbrough post office. The post office was situated on a quiet residential street in an area of Hoodsbrough controlled by Red Quentin. Red Quentin was a revolutionary, a vigorous man who habitually used a baseball bat to teach his political opponents the error of their ways. He was the leader of a commune of activists living at Jabby Jethro's farm. Jethro was an interesting character. He had inherited the farm from his father, but although he had developed considerable skill in wielding a pitchfork, farming had never really enthused him. Quentin had explained to him that this was because he was being oppressed by a corrupt and bigoted social structure. At first, Jethro was sceptical regarding the value of direct political action. He thought it sounded boring. But when Quentin assured him that his pitchfork skills would regularly be called upon in the fight for social justice, he allowed himself to be convinced. Another acolyte of Red Quentin was a grey-haired woman known as Mad Olga. Despite her thick Irish accent, she claimed to be the daughter of a Russian aristocrat who had been murdered by the Trotskyists. For this reason, she was a convinced Leninist and always carried a shotgun for self-defence. The final member of the commune was Steve the Stab, a Welshman who was very fond of knives, whether that be for whittling, throwing, or carving. Although the revolutionaries lived on a farm, and all believed fervently in the inherent dignity of manual labour, they preferred sitting around discussing the finer points of critical theory to actually doing any farming. They supported themselves by going door to door, collecting political donations from local inhabitants and businesses. Some of those donations were paid willingly by people who shared their political ideals. Bella was aware that her proposed raid on the post office would not be appreciated by Red Quentin, but she planned to get in and out swiftly before he had a chance to react, and she really did need some cash. And so it was that around 11 o'clock one weekday morning, Big Bruno's car pulled up outside the post office. Bella and Ernie stepped out of the car and stepped into the shop, where Ernie crashed his cudgel on the counter and demanded that the postmaster hand over the contents of the till. Unfortunately for Bella's plan, as she and Ernie walked in the front door of the shop, young Master Stamp, the postman's son, ran out of the back door and down the street, shouting at anyone he encountered that a robbery was in progress. Even more unfortunately, among the first people he encountered were Red Quentin and his revolutionaries, who were out collecting donations. They hurried toward the scene of the crime. Bella Salmonella had stuffed her handbag with bundles of banknotes and books of stamps handed to her by the terrified postmaster. She turned to leave, calling over her shoulder for Ernie the Ox to follow her, and headed back to the car. Climbing into the driver's seat, she observed Red Quentin and his political activists hurrying down the street. She turned the key in the ignition and hit the horn, trying to encourage Ernie to hurry up and join her. But Ernie had decided that he wanted to join the Dennis the Menace fan club and was demanding that the postmaster hand him a postal order. Bella now noticed that Red Quentin's gang included a grey-haired lady with a shotgun. Bella did not like the look of that shotgun at all. She put the car in gear and turned it into the road. As she pulled away from the curb, Ernie the Ox emerged from the post office. But Bella was not about to stop the car so that he could climb in. She was getting out of there. Mad Olga levelled her shotgun at the approaching car and fired. The windscreen shattered and fragments of glass cut Bella's face, but she carried on driving. Ernie the Ox could have turned and run, but that would have meant heading in the wrong direction. He decided to take the direct route back home and charged down the street, hoping that he could force his way past his opponents and show them a clean pair of heels. Red Quentin moved to block his path. Ernie hesitated. Steve the Stab threw a knife at him. Ernie dodged. Jabby Jethro charged in with his pitchfork. Ernie was bloodied, but unbowed. And then Steve the Stab piled in, throwing punches which failed to connect. Bella Salmonella stamped her foot on the accelerator. The car leapt forward. Mad Olga discharged the second barrel of her shotgun at the approaching vehicle. If Ernie the Ox had been sitting in the passenger seat, it would have gone badly with him, but he wasn't. A couple of pellets embedded themselves in Bella's arm, but that just annoyed her. She drove the car straight into Mad Olga, who bounced off the bonnet, suffering severe bruising. Bella then sped away down the street. Red Quentin now joined the throng, trying to take down Ernie the Ox. But his baseball bat swung wide, and now Ernie the Ox swung his cudgel in turn, making a solid contact with Steve the Stab, who decided to withdraw from the affray. It was Mad Olga who finished it. She picked herself up from the road, marched over to Ernie the Ox, and brought the butt of her empty shotgun down on his head. He fell to the ground, senseless. While the rest of the gang took it in turns to kick the prostrate body of Ernie the Ox, Steve the Stab watched Bella Salmonella accelerating away into the distance. After half a mile, Bella pulled over. She looked in the rearview mirror. There was no sign of pursuit. She took the last cigarette remaining in her cigarette case, inserted it in her cigarette holder, and lit it before driving on. She now had the cash in her handbag with which to buy some more.